que, en tant qu'homme, en tant que garçon, vous pensez que c'est important de pouvoir préparer la nourriture à la maison?
Bon, nous pouvons aussi le faire si seulement, par exemple, la femme est malade.
Et quand elle n'est pas malade?
Quand elle n'est pas malade, on peut toujours le faire pour montrer notre amour à elle, je pense.
Je pense qu'un homme responsable peut aussi s'occuper de ses enfants, même quand la femme est occupée à faire quelque chose ou pas.
Moi, je pense que ces sujets, c'est parfois compliqué parce que ça s'est transmis de génération en génération. Parce qu'après, même nos parents nous disaient, mon homme est aliaque. Ils disaient que l'homme ne doit pas pleurer. Et à un certain moment, même quand on est enfant, on montre que l'homme est toujours supérieur, que l'homme, il y a des choses qu'il ne peut pas faire. Ils disent qu'on peut vouloir que ça se fasse. Mais aux yeux des autres, ça crée déjà un problème. Ils disent, mais comment toi, tu peux faire ça? Pourtant, c'est réservé qu'à ta femme. Donc je pense qu'il faut aussi le côté là, éducation, qu'on va éduquer nos enfants pour leur montrer que l'homme et la femme, ils sont égaux. Comme ça, après, quand ils seront grands, ils pourront aussi éduquer d'autres personnes, je pense.
Pour qu'une femme travaille, d'abord, il doit être éduqué. Et avant, on disait que les femmes n'avaient pas le droit d'aller à l'école. Ce qui est en train d'être contredit aujourd'hui. Et donc, si elles partent déjà à l'école, c'est déjà une bonne chose de les initier à travailler aussi.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. To this panel, Sharing is Caring, Equal Parenting, a Path for Social Cohesion, as a question and to explore, organized by Make Mothers Matter under the 63rd session of the UN Commission on Social Development. My name is Emilienne de Leon, and I am the Senior Advisor of the Global Alliance for Care and will be moderating this session. For centuries, the family has been at the core of building communities and societies, and women have been mostly in charge of taking care and nurturing the family. Today, as Make Mothers Matter states, families in all diversity are still the connector of human development and continue nurturing the values, attitudes, and relationships within communities and societies. However, the development of societies have been impacted by the way the global economy and technology are entering every day in our lives. And women have been integrated slowly into the public arena, rather in the economy, the academia, the public positions, or at the informal economy as well. These are important things that are impacting the amount of time dedicated to nurturing families, and women are investing more than twice than men in caring activities. Today, we are going to explore how sharing can be a path for social development, how sharing care with men are important to promote healthier families and to promote a better social development where equal opportunities, both and caring and participating in the society, can be shared by parents in the family. Thank you very much for being everyone here. I want to just make some logistic announcements. We have interpretation for this session in English, French, and English, Spanish. So please go to the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and find the language you really need. And after our four panelists ends their presentations, we will have a session of questions and answers. We will have time for that. So please use the chat in the chat for questions and answers that also are at the bottom of your screen to post your questions. So we can read it, we can bring it into the floor when it's the appropriate moment. So I'm glad to introduce today as our first panelist, Angela Garcia, who is the project's director of Make Mothers Matters, and she's going to introduce us in a recent survey that Make Mothers Matter have developed. So, Angela, please go ahead.
Thank you, Emilienne, for your introduction. I would like just to add that I'm the proud mother of two boys of 5 and 8 years old. So I know a little bit about parenting, and I'm very excited to share for the first time some of the findings of our survey that we did last year among almost 10,000 mothers in 11 European countries and the UK. So today we're going to see how does equal parenting look today, the current reality of mothers. Next slide, please. So I would like to start with a little theory. I asked to our dear ChatGPT, what is equal parenting? And it said that it's a parenting approach where both parents share responsibilities for childcare, household tasks, and decision-making in a balanced and equitable way. And I also asked for an image because I'm a very visual person. So you can take a look at this picture. But the reality is another one. Please, next slide. The reality is that at least 63% of household and caregiving tasks are done by mothers alone, whether they work outside the home or not. You will see below 4 little graphs because there are 4 groups of those tasks: the child's physical needs, emotional and educational needs, tangible household tasks, and intangible household tasks. And you'll see that the dark pink bar it takes the majority of the graphics, and this is mainly mothers doing those tasks. There are some sharing of tasks, mainly concerning the child's emotional and educational needs, but it's still mothers who are doing all this. And we asked them if they're satisfied with the way parenting responsibilities are shared, and only 44% fully agreed. And if you see this second image, you will see a disengaged father, even if he has the baby in his arms, and a mother looking away, wondering where she should start because she has so much to do. Next slide, please. Another reality is that only 1 in 3 fathers take the paternity leave they are entitled to, or maybe more. This is a real pity because fathers in Europe, they do have paternity leaves. And when everything starts from that beginning, when you come back home after the hospital and you start creating a new life, and when we leave those mothers with those babies at home, mothers start doing all the tasks that I've mentioned before, and so it perpetuates imbalances. It's also a missed opportunity for fathers to build strong bonds with their children, and especially a missed opportunity to gain awareness of the value and effort involved in caregiving, so to gain awareness. And as children grow and reach school age, the parental involvement becomes more prominent, but still mothers continue to take on the primary caregiving role. We ask about the childcare support first options, and if you see the yellow bars of school-age children, you see that first option is myself, mothers, second with 35%, then grandparents, 23%, and then fathers. And let me just tell you that this is what we call unpaid care work, and it has value, even if not reflected in the GDP. According to Oxfam, if valued at the minimum wage, all the hours that women and girls spend on unpaid care work, it's worth $11 trillion a year globally. So it has worth. Next slide, please. So who is adapting here? Mothers. In order to do all the previous tasks commented, they adjust the professional journey to align with their family's needs. So the professional path is not linear. 23% reduce their working hours. 55% change their working status, either going to part-time, to become a stay-at-home mother, to become self-employed. And as you can see in the graph, those changes stay over time. Thank you. Next slide. So they have integrated that they are the ones that should adapt. And when we ask them what would be their preferred balance between work and family, they said that they prefer a combination of part-time work and family care, at least until the child is 12 years old. And I wonder, and this is an open question, would fathers want the same? Next slide, please. So all these adaptations and all this work has a high cost for mothers. The first cost is what we call the motherhood penalty, which describes how mothers suffer from different kinds of disadvantages in the workplace because of their motherhood. In our survey, nearly 27% of mothers state that motherhood negatively impacted their careers. And what does it mean? among other things, career stagnation. 30% of them felt that their learning opportunities had been restricted because of their motherhood. 22% lost their position entirely. So because they became pregnant or they had children, they lost their jobs. And there is also the financial impact. 39% reported a decrease in their regular income. So you don't only have to take care in this new child, but your finances are penalized. And normally, while maintaining the same level of responsibility, I've seen many mothers going part-time while maintaining all the responsibilities. And this not only affects current earnings, but also has long-term consequences on pension entitlements. So mothers become poorer. Next slide, please. And also very important, a majority of mothers experience mental health challenges. 67% reported feeling overloaded, and 50% stated that they suffer from at least one mental health issue: depression, anxiety, burnout, peripartum depression, or others. And these mental health challenges not only affect the mothers, but also their children and their families. But please, next slides. There is good news. We have deep dived in our data, and we see that mothers who report sharing tasks with the father or co-parent are significantly less likely to experience those mental health problems or to feel mentally overloaded. And that is why equal or shared parenting is so important for mothers, for the children's families, and the societies. And before I end with the next slide, I would like to remind you that the full disclose of the results of this survey will be done in a webinar in March. So stay tuned and follow us on our social media. I would like to end with a recent quote from Edward Sola, the winner of a Goya Award for his film Casa en Flames. He thanked a lot his mother, and he said, "Let's build a world where caregiving isn't based on sacrifice. Let's create a future where parenthood doesn't rely on super mothers, but on mothers and fathers supported by the social and economic structures they need to raise their children with dignity and freedom." Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Angela, for wonderful highlights of the survey. I'm sure there are more and more deep information that it's going to be interesting for everyone who's participating here, and moreover. And thank you for quoting that, because it really make a lot of sense on what we are talking today, and how the economy and the model of the economy have to change more in taking care of societies and the planet, instead of only taking earnings because of the economy. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. Now we are going to ask Basil van den Berg, Senior Advocacy Officer of Equimundo, to talk us about equal parenting matters for families. So please, Basil, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Emilienne, and thank you to Make Mothers Matter for the invitation to join. I will, similarly to Angela, also introduce myself as the father of 2 children. My daughter is 11 and my son is 8. And I will add on that I'm also the son of 2 parents. My mother and my father, I'm very fortunate, still live close to me. My mother is now 85 and my father is 92. So I'm very involved in care for my children, but also increasingly for my own parents. So I will speak a little bit about some of the findings from the State of the World's Fathers Report. I will also put the link in the chat for anybody who wants to have a look at the report, and in general speak about our work on the Men Care Global Fatherhood campaign, which is a campaign that aims towards equal parenting indeed. So can I please go to the next slide, please? So this is a word cloud that comes from the responses to the State of the World's Fathers Survey 2023. We are now working on the next one to come out in 2026. And we did the previous one in 17 countries. We had just over 12,000 respondents from a range of countries around the world. And we asked respondents, what is the word that you associate with care? And it was really wonderful to see such a positive response to the word care. If we ask the question, what is the word that you associate with care? Words like help, empathy, love, protection. On the other hand, and I will echo here what Angela was saying earlier, the next slide, please. We cannot ignore the very severe the very severe challenges that mothers face in maintaining an income and maintaining an economic career if men do not step into the caregiving. This image comes from Johan Jarnestad, who did the illustration for the Nobel Prize that was won by the economist Claudia Goldin on her work on the global gender pay gap. And it shows how women's income reduces as pregnancy happens, and then how men's careers increase, and how women never really catch up. But I also want to add another dimension to this, which Angela also mentioned briefly. The next slide, please. In the one survey where we started seeing this dynamic was in the US, in our State of American Men report, but we have also picked it up in other countries like my own, South Africa as well. A key finding on our survey with men about their own well-being and mental health is that men's mental health outcomes are quite poor around the world. And that's why we titled this report From Crisis and Confusion to Hope. Many men reported that they haven't spoken with somebody outside of engagement over the internet for 14 days, for 2 weeks. Many of them reported that nobody really knows them, and have overall expressed a sense of confusion and vulnerability in terms of not being really clear about where they are going in their life. And as we know, that is fertile ground for let me say, opinions and agendas that might be harmful to recruit men to agendas that might not be that good for social cohesion. So I want to present another dimension to what I had just shown about the motherhood penalty. The next slide, please. And I with apology to Johan Jarnes, that I flipped this diagram around, and rather than tracking dollars, I tracked care and connection. And where I see that women's care and connection remains because of the attachment and bonding with children, it is a lot of hard work, but there also is the dimension of attachment and bonding that comes from care work. Men's connection and care, well, men's connection and social connection that comes from those caregiving relationships goes down as their mental health outcomes also go down. So that's a real motivator for us to have men remain in caregiving work, to equalize the gender inequality and to redistribute, of course, but also there are such valuable mental health outcomes for men if they are more involved in care work. The next slide, please. So in our survey, we asked what are the barriers to parents getting more support in terms of being able to do care work. Many fathers reported that getting paid care for the household is quite expensive. The care services are not available enough, and the hours of guaranteed care that are supported by workplaces are not enough. The next slide, please. So this slide, I think the image got disappeared in my email. It's okay, we can pause on the previous one, because I do want to say what you would have seen if my graph had survived. And that is that in South Africa, we had asked parents why they do not have enough time to care for their children. And fathers had responded that they do not have enough time by the time the day ends. They don't have time for care. And mothers had responded that they do not have enough support from their partners. So really interesting to see the same dynamic that we're seeing, whereas fathers feel, well, I'm holding down 2 jobs, I'm doing my best to earn an income to support the house. At the same time, in fact, in South Africa, in my country, we know that mothers are actually breadwinners and caregivers. It's very clear from our national data that mothers actually spend more money on household support than fathers do, even though fathers may identify as the providers. So the next slide, please. And this returns, there's that one. This returns a little bit to the theme that I'd spoken about earlier about men's mental health outcomes. A report we did a few years ago now, just as we were actually in the COVID pandemic, showed that when men are engaged in self-care, in self-emotional care, they are more likely to care for others. And in the most recent State of the World's Fathers, we found the same, that men who are more engaged in care for others are more likely to care better for themselves. So just to pull one statistic from this graph, that those men who reported spending time on emotional self-care were twice as likely to care for family members with a disability, for example. And then the rest of the graphs goes on to demonstrate that if men are able to practice self-care, they are more available for care for others. So the next slide, please. Some of the work that the Men Care campaign has been doing has been to not only speak with the individual men and women in families, but to really try and create the environment that would support equal care. And we have a policy platform called the Men Care Commitment, which we have asked businesses and government departments to agree to. I'm just going to pull one commitment from that, and that is that we actually need male political leaders to support care policies. Often we find that the social welfare or care policies are managed by female politicians, where it repeats the reality in norms in society in the parliamentary decision-making space. But we've really tried to call on men as fathers in their political spaces to really alert them to the caregiving responsibilities they have and to help them to understand that that also has bearing on their decisions regarding policies. So this picture, I am there at a recent event with the Minister of Information and Civic Education from Sierra Leone, Minister Cherno Bar, who is a shining example of exactly the dynamic we were talking about. So I will close there. And my final slide, the slides will be available, is a link to join the Men Care campaign, and I look forward to the rest of the conversation. I will post a few links in the chat as we speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Basil, for such a wonderful presentation and making us very clear how it's not so easy that men will get engaged in sharing the parenting and the care of families, but also how it is a cultural issue as well at the global level. Not only, usually we think that maybe it's more in the global south, it's everywhere, and how we can also, I think, one of the things you are posing here, it's putting here, it's how the mental health will be better if we really connect and bond with families, both parents instead, and sharing all this. So thank you very much. And people has your in the chat your information, and if you want to post anything, please go ahead. So thank you very much. We are going now to turn to Marcus Sandmeyer, who he is the vice president of the and co-founder of Be Family, and he's going to talk us about the role of the private sector to support equal parenting, a really important role that the private sector needs to play. Please, Marcus, go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and also good evening for everybody who's listening. Thanks a lot for the invitation, and MMM is a founding member of our association, so we are very happy to be at this event and to participate. And the point is that we talk about what happens with men at home, but very often it's also the question what happens at work. Yeah. And my background is I was the general manager for the French market leader in baby food, Bledina, who's part of the Danone Group. And at the time, I asked myself, are we the best workplace, for parenthood? So because it's our business to sell baby food, and then we ask ourselves, do we give the best conditions for the people who are working in our company for being good parents. And then we looked a bit deeper into these elements. And this was a bit the starting point together with Françoise Cardoso, who worked in a different area, a lot about breastfeeding and other questions of parenting, where we can attack and what we can look at. When we look at the figures, and we come into this question about work-life balance, there's a good hope and there's a good perspective that the millennials consider that being a good parent and being parent in life is the biggest success which you can have. So I think this is already a nomistic point, because it means that there's an intention by the generation to do so. So I think by giving them the good examples and support, we can get there. But let's now see what is the reality in the next slide. 55% of parents in the whole world have the feeling that they fail in the first year of parenthood. And it's probably of overcharge, of discovery, of a lot of questions. And I know it from the business perspective that parents ask a lot of questions, because we had a helpline and there's a lot of questions about how to do. And there's a lot of interaction in the couple about how to do things, how to share things. And 77% of parents working in France are really having a problem concerning how to conciliate work and parenthood. On the other hand, and now we look more from a company perspective, while parents are more happy employees, and this is quite interesting, because they are twice less sick, 6 times less absent, 9 times more attached to the company, 31% more productive, and 55% more creative. So there's actually not only a human interest for a company and for the employer, but there's also a business interest to be the best place to raise a family and to have family-friendly workplaces. Let's go to the next slide. Out of this, together with Françoise Cardoso and other engaged in the area and M&M, we created the Be Family movement. Because we figured out that there's a need for a forum for companies to exchange, reflect, and act together with other companies. And then there's another point, because this is something which is emerging and we find it in different countries, also a network of family tech companies, but also associations which are proposing solutions. So there are enough ideas there, there's enough examples there, but not always it's put into place and also executed. So let's go into some examples. First, parental processes are a real strategic necessity. So it's no more enough to say, okay, yes, I know that we have people working here who have children, but we have to adapt to it when we are running a company. Why? First, female talents are now very often in the majority. So women representing the majority of university graduates, and in a lot of functions, they are now very essential, and this is on all professional levels. So the integration of women into the workplace also gives a responsibility to the company to be there. The other element, and if you really want to also keep talent, you have to have a good integration after parenthood. We just saw the element about a career gap, less information, really changing the gap. And in all questions of equality and diversity, it's important that companies are following these questions and do something against this gap. There's a lot done about salary at the beginning, but then the gap is coming because of promotion, because women who are on maternity leave are not in the list of potential talents and so on. On the other hand, also, the new generation has different expectations. Millennials and Gen Z, they really see work-life balance as a key demand, and they demand it also very directly when they have their interviews for a job. Fathers, and it depends from the country and so on, but they become more conscious about that they should be involved in parenting. And the demands are coming from both areas. The other societal evolution is that we have different family models, and especially in a lot of European countries, we have a lot of single parents also. So it's not only about sharing, but it's also about how it's working. And we also have blended family, which are composed differently and so on. So this means a more structured daily planning, and daily planning means to find a good way between working and private life. About solutions. Because very often companies think that it needs a lot of financial investment. Actually, you can change a lot by just changing the clock a little bit. So for example, to give rules like starting meetings only at 9:30 and not already at 8 o'clock, or have the meetings till 7 in the evening, helps parents a lot, to do the duties they have to do to bring children to the school or to the gallery and so on. So kindergarten times are very fixed, and parents can then share, okay, how you go today, I go tomorrow, and so on. The other thing is about flexibility in work location. So it's not only a question of home office or not home office. It's really the question also, can I choose when and where I want to be? And also that when kids are sick or others, that there's an understanding, that it can be necessary to stay home. The other element is, and this is where, for example, in Bledina we did very good experience, is to stay connected to parents on parental leave. Very often mothers which are on maternity leave are considered as out of the company. So if you look at them as active workforce and, for example, invite them for business updates, meets, company activities, invite them also for coffee and so on, they continue to be part of the activities. And also, for example, keep them in the list of the potential talents because they will return. So they are not gone. And it's very important just to consider them an active workforce. Next slide. The other thing is facilitate parental leave. And there, well, we already saw it. Men very often don't take it. We saw it in the survey. We have to move from mother pregnancy leave to parental leave in the definition. I think that's the first thing to do because it gives a different mindset. And for example, I made the experience that when members of the management team took parental leave, so a man said, okay, I go on parental leave, it was a symbolic thing which had a very strong effect to other people. And then also create the conditions for reintegration. Then the other thing concerning support during pregnancy is about, okay, in the period when mothers still work, that you really create the conditions that the pregnancy will go in a good way and also help them in a further way. So we have a lot of examples from the companies, and our objective at Be Family is to share, to promote, to give good examples, and also to show that you don't need a revolution. You can make an evolution, and step by step, you're creating workplaces which are really family friendly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcus, for such an interesting presentation and also for sharing how there are solutions that companies and the private sector can take on. But also still, I would say it's still a cultural issue that we can promote from different arenas. And thank you about that. So now we are going to ask Francisco Cos to present us. He is the Senior Research Coordinator from the United Nations Research Institute for Social Development, UNRISD, and he can present about the connections between recognition and redistribution of care and social development. Francisco, please go ahead. And before I give you the floor, sorry, I want to ask the audience that they can put their questions at the bottom on the chat at the bottom of the screen. Please go ahead. Don't hesitate to make your questions. Francisco, please.
Thank you, Emilian, and thank you to all the organizers and previous speakers. It is a real privilege to be here. I work for the UN Research Institute for Social Development. We are a think tank that works on social development issues at the frontier of these debates. And we have been working on gender issues for over 60 years. UNRIS developed the famous Diamond of Care back in 2007, which is a concept and a tool that has been used all over the world, and we are very happy to contribute to these debates. UNRIS is one of the agencies that has been trying to work with men, and in some cases we have been criticized for using that approach, but we certainly believe that if we don't involve men much more in the struggle for gender equality, it's going to be very difficult to achieve it. I have a little PowerPoint that we sent rather late, I have to say, so I don't know if it will be possible to have a look at it. Otherwise, is absolutely fine. I can continue without it. But I have been asked to talk about the connections between a, 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 a fair distribution of care. I know there is a debate about equal the distribution of care or not, but let's say a fair distribution of care, and what are the benefits for development. And here again, the evidence that we have is what feminists have been saying for a very long time, since the writings of Esther Bosserup back in the 1970s, the work by Naila Kabir and other academics, and that is that gender equality has incredible benefits for development overall. No, and if we look at the recent evidence, for example, from the World Economic Forum, we can see that strengthening the care economy enables stakeholders to simultaneously implement solutions to key economic issues, including job creation, talent flow, productivity, and more. Facing such a horizon, care becomes the key to the future of economic growth. However, some of these outcomes, like job creation, talent flow, productivity, obviously have a social angle as well. But we can see from rather orthodox partners like the World Economic Forum that there are these connections. The World Bank again sustains that the care economy is a key driver of economic growth, and the ILO in a 2022 report estimated that globally investing in universal childcare and long-term care services could generate up to 280 million jobs by 2030 and a further 19 million by 2035 for a total of 299 million jobs. The Eurasia Group also claims that implementing universal childcare could add roughly 3.0 trillion to the global economy by 2030, and there are different virtuous circles that explain this causality in different ways. So, from an economic point of view, we know that the care economy has important benefits for growth, but obviously much more in terms of social development and well-being, like many other interventions have proved in the past. Um, the relation between the involvement of men in this in care is not investigated, and probably we should do more research on that, because I am sure it would have a lot of important benefits in terms of growth, in terms of welfare, and obviously in the well-being of men and women, as some of my predecessors have already explained. Eh, and probably I'm just going to shift the conversation a little bit and explain a little bit about the work that UNRIST is doing in terms of transforming what we call the cultural norms. Some people call them social norms, but we believe that these norms are embedded in a larger set of rules that belong to culture. Culture has its own logic, and it really embeds these rules of masculinity and femininity very, very deeply at an unconscious level. And some agencies have been using behavioral science, behavior to explain these norms, but we want to go to a deeper level, and we use psychoanalytical techniques and psychoanalytical approaches because we believe that these norms are at a much deeper level. And those have to do with what culture asks men and women to do. And as long as we don't change in the culture, the idea that men are the brave and the public, and they should be in the public sphere, and men who are in the households are because they are either weak or they are either unemployed. It's going to be very difficult to transform this. The same happens to women. As long as women find still a lot of their destiny in maternity or in those norms of femininity, is going to be very difficult. So understanding how culture works might prove useful to start some campaigns, to start some interventions of public policy to transform a very, very deep level that is absolutely necessary. Ulrich has been working with different men. For example, we have a video that is available in our website, and I'm going to post it in the chat, where we have different men, and we have the director of the W Health Organization talking about why it's important for men to care, and why this must be a shared responsibility. And we believe that by integrating these different discourses is very it might help to transform. But as I said, I don't think we have done a lot of terms in policy. We have done some programs like the shared paternity leave that we have, but we have been less successful to change the culture, and we have to change the culture. Parity is the bottom line. If the human condition is mixed, and if men and women are more and more in the public spheres, men should also be in the private sphere. So, besides all these economic arguments about the importance of care in growth or social development or social welfare, we must recognize that that equality, it's a common good, it's a good, and it's a ideal of democracy and modernity. And we really have to believe that very, very strongly in these difficult times where some of the values of gender and gender equality are being questioned at the highest levels. But I think we should not lose hope, and the cultural project of transforming these rules have to continue. So, and I'll stop here for the moment.
Thank you, Francisco. Thank you very much for letting us know how UNRIST has been addressing this issue and how at the bottom equal parity, it's parity between men and women, it's part of this analysis and this involvement of sharing caring. So now we are going to the questions and answers part of the session. So I am going to share like 3 or 4 questions that we already received to the panelists. One of them, it's more addressed to Marcus. Let me find it. Sorry. So from Kyle Pruitt, Marcus, he's telling you it's such a helpful for perspective on what simmers in the data Angela presented. Still concerned about reliance on equal versus shared designation of what parents are trying to accomplish. Equal gets weaponized, distracting from the goals and enormous benefits of co-parenting. So that's one. I'm going to read another 2 or 3 so you can you as panelists can choose who wants to go first. Are there major differences between countries in the Make Mothers Matter survey regarding how household and childcare responsibilities are shared? And then from Dr. Jocelyn A. Scott, she is telling us a really interesting comment. This is, of course, an extremely important event, as she says, but she wants to be that we have cautious in being included, namely, that when the law dictates or mandates shared parenting, this can be an issue where there is child abuse, child sexual abuse, criminal assault at home, and other forms of domestic violence, coercive control, etc., exercised by one partner, sadly, usually by husband, partner, father. There is extensive research from the UK, Manchester University, and Australia Feminist Legal Centre, and various universities confirming that courts too often side with the abusive husband, partner, father on the connection that shared parenting is not a legislative mandate, but in the interest of the child or children, sometimes is within flexible workplaces, the goals for which we aim properly and seeking the best outcome for all can be turned against our aspirations, such as undercut our aims. So that's one, that's what comment that we find it's very interesting. So if anyone or some of you want to address it, let me go from some other ones. As we are working with large and multi-regional families, I am interested to hear about examples on how to share the care among generations, example grandparents, grandkids, and vice versa. That comes from Kinga Joe, National Association of Large Families. And from Maxencia Nakibuka, she wants to know, well, the person wants to know how women caregivers are coping up after the US executive orders, which pathways they have to put in place to advance their work and keep supporting their clients to avoid burnout and trauma for both services providers and receivers. So that's what I have from now. So please go ahead. We will be receiving more questions, but
I can start
first. Please, Marcus, do the first.
I can start because about equal parenting and what are the conditions and why isn't it happening and so on. One important point is role models. Yeah, It's not only the question if things are in place. For sure, we need parental policies in companies, yeah, where companies are thinking about, okay, what are we providing? What are the conditions? Yeah, do we have maternity leave or do we have parental leave? Yeah, what are the conditions for it? But also, what are the supports for places in kindergarten and etc. etc. So for sure, framework has to be in place. But afterwards, we are humans and humans follow other humans. Yeah? And if, for example, in the management team or in the general management, there's not a good example how to combine this, yeah, other people in the company won't do it. Yeah. So, for example, in my management team, I had two women where their husbands, for example, didn't work and took care of the children. Yeah, it gives a very strong signal. Yeah, that it's not always the men, yeah, who go to work and the women stay at home. Yeah, so it can also be vice versa. One example. The other example, also a colleague. Yeah, he took the parental leave. Yeah. And like this afterwards in his team also more took it because it was no more seen as a vacation, yeah, but really as a right to take, yeah, and the moment, yeah, to enjoy with the children and to really be part of the evolution. So I think also media plays a big role. That we don't have stereotypes which are proposed, but also to show, yeah, what are the kinds of possibilities. And as said afterwards, it's really also to be conscious, yeah, to reflect about it. And therefore, we're saying that parental policies are very important in companies, putting the things into place, yeah. Then for sure also that associations like Make Mothers Matter promote for parental leaves and not only maternity leaves, yeah, and so on. So there are different things to do, but one thing is really important, that it's not only a statement, but it's really somebody who's doing it. And very often it has to be symbolic from people who are leaders, yeah, or it can also be prominent people, others, yeah, because if it's more and more integrated in society, it will also reflect to other people. Up, you're on off micro.
Yes, thank you so much, Marcus, for reminding me. Sorry for that. Angela, do you want to answer about the
Yes, I
question?
would like to answer the question about if there are differences among the countries of the survey MMM conducted last year on the sharing of the tasks. There are differences, right? But the major tendency is that women are doing most of the tasks, no matter if the country is very like a country like Sweden with a lot of policies around motherhood and fatherhood, but still women are there, like doing a lot. The tasks that are mostly shared, as I said before, are the ones concerning the emotional and educational needs. There are countries that stand out, like for example, Portugal, Spain, or Sweden, where the sharing is higher than, for example, countries like Ireland. But still, mothers all around the countries are doing a lot. And concerning the intergenerational care, I would like to add that, for example, in Sweden, Sweden is the first country to give grandparents paid leave. And that includes extended family members the right to take care of their families while also getting paid, because we know that grandparents are giving a lot and they play a very important role in families.
Thank you so much. I don't know if Basil or Francisco, do you want to address some of the comments and questions?
Yes,
Basil?
thank you so much. So I'll respond firstly just to one question that popped up in the chat about parental leave. So just to say the framing of high quality parental leave, we launched a platform some years ago, and our colleague Nikki van der Gaag is actually on the call, who worked on that, called the MenCare Parental Leave Platform, and it copied the basic model presented by the ILO or the Plent platform in Spain of paid leave with wage replacement and job security, non-transferable, so it needs a non-transferable portion, equal, and So paid equal non-transferable. So plenty is that's the basic components of good parental leave, and sometimes if the economy allows a shared portion, which is available to both parents to decide about. I just wanted to respond on the question from the large family related to large families, and I think a little bit about the conversation about equality as well. In that we've increasingly, with our research on men's poor mental health outcomes, found that many of the men who respond to some of our surveys report a lack of purpose, a feeling, a sense of not being really clear about their purpose in life. And we've really seen that purpose can be found in the relationships contained within care. So in addition to talking about redistribution, the value of recognition of care and men's engagement in care as a way to find deeper purpose in relationships is really important. And as we've been speaking on the call, I just want to point out that we're not only talking about fathers, but we're talking about men in care networks. So if we're talking about large families, there's uncles, brothers, grandfathers, friends, co-residents, tenants, and all of those men have an opportunity to contribute both to childcare, but also to elder care. And you know that care goes much wider than just parenting. And then the last point, and then I'll pass the microphone back, is just to say that I learned how to care from my mother. So as we talk about intergenerational transfer of care, I've often thought about that as a single sex channel, that boys learn from men, and that's true, but boys also learn from mothers, and girls learn from fathers. So the intergenerational transfer of care isn't in single gender lanes, but it could actually, in a family context or a care network, happen that boys learn about care from the women in their family. Thank you.
Thank you, Basil. Francisco, do you want to add something?
Yes, well, first I would like to say hello to Nikki. It's great to see her participating in the seminar. We haven't worked for a long time, but it's really great to reconnect through this wonderful seminar. Probably would just like to pick up on the point on Bessel about this cross influence. And as I said, we use some psychoanalytical tools, and we have been doing some research on the young girls and women who decided to follow careers in STEM or enter politics. And we have found out that the father actually has a huge influence on that. And this is something that also happens with a lot of feminists, that the father is the one who had a great influence. In some cases, the mother, what we have found is that the father is the one who, in a way, is the supporter, the role model, and who breaks that traditional role. And we have also found out that in the case of men are the mothers who play a very, very important role in developing the care skills or the care mm, devotion that some men show. And this is probably more is more present in gay men than heterosexual men. We also have to make some differences in terms of sexual orientation as well. But this is the kind of research that we do. So this is why we think that a psychoanalytical lens is really important to explain a lot of this behavior. As you might remember, Freud wrote a lot about these influences in the 19th century. Now, I would like to turn to the question about UNRIST. And UNRIST is a very special place in the UN because we are completely independent. We are autonomous. We don't receive anything from the UN budget, and we do not have any member state in our board. Our board is conformed by researchers, including Naila Kabir, who is in our board. So that gives us a huge independence. That independence sometimes is reflected in the funding problems that we face at times, but it gives us, and at this time, probably UNRIS is very well positioned more than any other agency in the UN who have a little bit more of compromises to advance some of these agendas. For example, we are doing a lot of work on the gender backlash. And I think we are probably the most vocal at the time. We're going to publish a book in May, a book written by Marta Lamas on the gender ideology and the gender backlash. We have written extensively about that. And we are going to continue to do that because probably we are not going to suffer that. And we are very happy to provide a space for all those voices that do not find resonance in the post January 20 shift in geopolitics.
Thank you so much, Francisco. I am very aware about the time. We have just 15 more minutes, but there are some comments and questions that are related to government's roles, also the corporate, the private sector, and the government's roles. So we have, what are your governments doing? It is one of the questions in each one of you, but here we have, can government explore having parental leave and can it be taken at any point as opposed to when a child is born? So there are many other issues that it's, when we are talking about sharing and the caring, sharing the caring, whatever, we are not also talking only about families. Of course, family is the center, as I said at the very beginning, and the conversation has been doing that. But the governments has a role to play here, as well as the corporate sector. They are the biggest actors in our societies. So can you talk a little bit about that? And at the same time, I will ask you to have some final thoughts on the conversation before we begin to go to the end of this session, please. So who wants to begin around this role of these two big sectors, governments and corporate sector?
Perhaps I can start just by, when you look at the policies, yeah, which are exist in a lot of countries, yeah, very often it's not very advanced concerning all these questions. Yeah, there's the just necessary in legislation. So actually, when companies, would only rely on what they have as legal obligations, yeah, and that's the big part of companies, because we have to be clear. Big international companies, they go probably further, but most people are working in small companies, yeah. And it's actually the small companies who are carrying an economy, and they are only respecting what just the legal requirement is, yeah. And there we have to say that it's very limited, yeah. So when you look at government laws or regulations and so on, yeah, we are far away, yeah, from what you said. Okay, we can take this leave whenever we want, yeah, because no, yeah, in the regulation it's very clear about what means, yeah, maternity leave or parental leave when it's already there, yeah. So it's very restricted, yeah. And it's also very clear about when it starts, how it has to end, yeah, and there's no flexibility at all, yeah. So the law is very, or the social codes normally, yeah, because it's afterwards not in the law, but it's in the social codes where it's expressed, yeah, are very restrictive for companies, yeah. So but for sure you can go beyond, but this means financial means, and this only big companies can carry. So the majority of people who are working in very small or small companies, yeah. Let's take bakeries, others, and so on. You can count a lot, yeah. It's very limited. That's only from a company perspective about what do I have to fulfill as a requirement, yeah.
Thank you so much. I have two more that are very interesting. Just let me put it there. One, it's do the panelists think that emphasizing the positive side of care for men can help to counter the current backlash? And this is following your comment, Francisco. Maybe Basil, you can address that, and I will give you the parole in a moment, Francisco. And the other thing, I think this is critical. Most people in the global south are actually part of the informal economy, so not even benefit from the labor laws. So what are we doing there? What the governments, the corporate sector, and all the society are doing there? Please, Francisco, go ahead, and then maybe Basil, and finally, I will ask you, Angela, to help us with your final thoughts.
Yes, I would say a positive portrayal of men caring can be helpful, but I don't think will be enough because a lot of men are very comfortable in their position of having somebody else who takes up that responsibility. So here, really, the onus is on women, and women really have to say stop. And really, women have to say it's not fair that we don't share the care. It's not fair that the burden is on me. So this is again building women's agency, isn't it? And how different interventions can build the capacity of women to say no. And of course, that crosses many other policies like income generating policies, political participation policies. But the bottom line is that men, even with all the positive things, are not going to relinquish privileges if women don't say, stop, this is enough.
Thank you so much. Basil, do you want to add something to the reflection?
Sure. Thank you so much, Emilian, and agreed with Francisco. And maybe adding a dimension there of where possible, if a male partner or a male caregiver is available, to simply step away. So our colleagues in the Netherlands have done a lot of work on solo parenting, and I can talk from experience in being with my child alone for an extended period of time. That's when I really become aware of what care is all about. And when I say an extended period, I mean when the laundry and the takeaways run out, like 4 days or 5 days at a minimum. So you can't only depend on what's available, but you actually have to work a little bit to make all of the resources available for the child. And I do think that's also an important distinction in how we speak about care, is that we've often seen that men deeply care about others and deeply care about issues, but that's very different from actually giving care or doing the care work. So just being really clear that when we're talking about care and equal care, it's the emotional feeling of care, but we're also, of course, talking about the physical work. I just wanted to make one point about the informal economy. And I think a little bit policy related in terms of the topic you raised, Emilian, about policies, that we've spoken a lot about parental leave, but of course there are other policies that have bearing on gender equal caregiving. For example, reforms in the health system, making frontline health facilities more gender transformative, both in their services to mothers, but also to fathers and to men, but also parents of all genders. So that's one dimension that's really important. The other one is, of course, social protection, and being clear that social protection is not only in the countries where it's available to everybody, to really be explicit about how it's being offered to everybody. And that takes me to the point of informal economy. Our colleagues at the World Policy Analysis Center at UCLA have done fantastic work on documenting the protections offered to workers in the informal economy, particularly on policies like parental leave and other care support policies. And I was surprised to see that some of those protections actually do extend to the informal economy, even though workers are not formally employed. Whether people access it and whether that puts their jobs at risk is another question, but at least in some countries, it's nice to see that it is available.
Thank you so much, Basil, for addressing that. Angela, I want to hear from you and your also final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to react to Francisco's comment because he's very, very right about men being comfortable in their position. Of course, I mean, you know that you go to work, you come back, everything is done. So it's super easy, actually. It's super easy, but we need, like, it starts from the privacy of the home, and we really need fathers. And you said that it won't change until women say stop. But the thing is that a woman, a mother, we cannot say stop, because we cannot stop preparing meals for our kids or preparing their clothes for the next morning and so on and so on. So women today and mothers today, we cannot stop. But what's happening is that young women, they see that it's so difficult today. It's such a challenge to become a mother that they just decide not to be a mother. And this is a pity, and maybe when we will realize, it will be too late. I always say that in this society there is a crisis of values, and care. As I said before, it has an economic value if we want to give it a value. But it's so important, It's like all these professions, like the nurses, the workers in the kindergartens, and so on. It's so important, and they're all burnout. They're all burnout, and we really need to start value care and to maybe use the codes of the current economy to say, okay, so this is the price, and maybe, I don't know, start changing that. And I would like to end with a quote of an UK economist, Tim Jackson. He said in a speech at the 2023 Beyond Growth Conference at the EU Parliament, I really like this quote: "Without care, we are nothing. Our progress is nothing. Without care, there is no economy." So I would like to end with this.
Thank you so much, Angela, and thank you for all this wonderful conversation. And yes, of course, women, we cannot stop by when you are a mother or when you are taking care even of your parents, when it's the case, or disability in your family. But at the same time, we need to be aware that it's also something, it's how we shift the mentality on really center care of people, business model. Because if we don't do that, the business model is not changing easily, and the governments are many times following that. So that's part of the key questions we have to continue exploring over the next months and maybe years. But anyway, it has been really a pleasure, and I very grateful to Make Mothers Matter to ask me to moderate this panel. I want to give the floor to Valerie, because she has been very proactive on organizing this. And thank you very much, every one of you, for being here and attending. There will be a lot of information in the chat, and Valerie is going to talk also about that. So thank you so much. Valerie, up to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emilienne. And before we close, I wanted to thank all of us who made this event possible. And of course, I would like to start by our expert moderator and speakers for their really interesting presentation and all the valuable insights they shared during the discussion. I really hope that there will be some other opportunity to collaborate to advance this topic of sharing the care. I would like also to express our particular gratitude to the Global Alliance for Care for their great support, and we really look forward to continue working together. And this brings me to extend special thanks to our two interpreters, Maera and Marie-Liesse, who made this event accessible to non-English speakers. A big thank as well to the MMM team, which was behind the organization of this event, beginning with Shanaz, our comms manager, with whom you interacted in the chat, as well as the MMM team in New York, Jackie, Farah, and Aurélie. Big thank you to you. And last but not least, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for your active participation and your strong engagement during the whole discussion. So as Angela already said, please stay tuned. Our next webinar will be around International Women's Day and will be about a deeper dive into the result of the EU survey that Angela briefly presented. So thank you very much again to all of you, and bye-bye for now.